Welcome back to Sunday Vibes, one and all. It's me, it's Mikey, and it's a strange man on the end today.
Yeah,
Last seen when? Man. James Wayne?
I would say Sunday Vibes-wise, it was back in the old pub.
Gav's Arse Crap pub.
Yeah, that one. And
shout out
actually, no, there was the very vague appearance when we all said goodbye to the pub. But that doesn't count. The last time was before that. So I want to say 2018 maybe.
Yeah, wow. Shout out. If you remember Gav's Arse Crack Pub, please do let us know in the comments below. Mikey, looking very smart today, mate.
Thank you, mate. Cheers. Yeah.
I like the shirt on you.
Thank you. My mate lent it to me for Sky Sports news appearances back in the summer. I've not given it back to him.
Right.
Good to have James back. Also, you can tell you've become a more refined man since the last time you were on Sunday Vibes by the way that you hold your mic.
Yeah, you do hold it like a wine glass.
Yeah, you hold it like a wine glass.
Like a man with a pipe.
Right, let's start talking about football, shall we, boys?
Yeah, let's do it.
As you can see from today's video, we are going to be looking at some of the best Wonderkids in Europe this season. Now, Wonderkids obviously a very loose term in the world of football.
Yeah.
We've termed this as teenagers. Okay, so you can't be 20, you can't be 21, so there's some big shouts in there that aren't going to be included, the likes of Florian Wirtz, the likes of Musiala, the likes of Jude Bellingham, Xavi Simons. We're fully aware these are Wonderkids, but by our term, teenagers won't be featuring in this. So what we're going to do is we're each going to present 5 names to the table, and at the end of this video we've got to come up with a collaborative order on the 5. Who are the definitive 5 best Wonderkids this season in European football? Who wants to go first with their first suggestion?
I'm happy to go first. I think I'll probably start big. So we all picked out 5. They're not necessarily our 5 best. We picked out kind of ones that we picked 15 and split it. We kind of went for the ones that we were most interested individually in. And yeah, like Joe says, we'll rank them. But it was interesting though, like, at the start of the process, because we were originally going to include 20-year-olds and then realised that there are just so many who are getting significant game time in Europe. And I wonder whether, it feels like there's more young players getting significant game time in the top leagues than there were maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I wonder whether that has something to do with the kind of transfer market, the kind of economic downturn in kind of European football outside of the Premier League. Clubs having to sign players younger and cheaper and having to rely more quickly on academy products. But I digress, because we're going to start with a player at a club who have never been shy of giving significant minutes to academy products from a young age, and it's Benfica and it's João Neves, who has been absolutely remarkable this season. In terms of his recent history, you go back a year ago to when Enzo Fernandez left Chelsea, and that opened the door for him to enter that Benfica midfield. I think he got his debut just before the January window, just after the World Cup in 2022. And he'd already made waves, of course, in the youth team. He'd helped them to the UEFA Youth League in 2022. That's the only time that Benfica have ever won it. He also won a goal of the tournaments at the Under-21 Euros last summer with a great volley against Belgium. Got 6 starts last year under Roger Schmidt. He's now got 21 appearances to his name this season, almost all of them starts. He's just been an absolute bedrock of that side this season, and I know Benfica are they're not pulling up trees in quite the same way as they were under Schmidt last year, but given the amount of talent that left them, that's first of all understandable. But secondly, he's keeping someone like Florentino Luis, although he has got into the side a bit more recently as it's partnered him. But especially in the first half of the season, he was keeping Florentino Luis out of the side, and that was a player who has been tipped for a big move for a long time. Links to Liverpool, one of the most highly rated kind of under 25 defensive midfielders in Europe, who is still putting up crazy defensive numbers this season, and was a big part of their Champions League quarter-final side last year. His game time has taken a big hit. Someone like Orkun Korkçu, who was brought in and was kind of seen as that Enzo Fernandez replacement, also hasn't had maybe as much game time as we would have thought, because João Neves is the first choice in that midfield at 19 years of age, and he absolutely backs it up. He ranks 3rd in the league for both touches and passes into the final third, but he also ranks 2nd for tackles won, so he's kind of got everything that you need to succeed as a top-level defensive midfielder. He ranks consistently in the top 10% of midfielders in a number of metrics, kind of both offensively and defensively, among leagues outside of the top 5 in Europe. So he's already playing at a very high level. Man United are supposedly interested in him, or at least were interested in him before the January window. Of course, Man United's kind of targets in the transfer market will probably change. They're now under the new ownership. But Bayern Munich were also supposedly interested. Wolves were supposedly interested last summer, as early as that, and that triggered Benfica to reportedly raise his release clause to 100 million euros. So,
a lot of money. That is a lot of money.
Of course, it's a lot of money, and is he worth it? We probably don't know yet. You know, was Enzo Fernandez worth that amount of money? You know, probably not. Like, will he prove to be a really good player at Chelsea? He may well do. I know he's got a lot of stick this season, but yeah, it's hard to tell, isn't it? But it follows, you know, a very well-trodden pattern with Benfica in terms of their ability to sell for huge fees to clubs in bigger leagues. So I wouldn't be overly surprised if Neves ends up moving for a huge fee. But this summer, I don't quite know. It's not quite like Enzo, where, you know, he had an amazing World Cup, or Darwin Nunez, who's like a forward, and centre forwards were like really hard to come by back then. Whereas I feel like the defensive midfielder market is you know, probably not quite as congested right now. So I could see Neves probably staying at Benfica for another year or two and then fetching a big fee. It feels like, maybe it would require them to go deep in the Champions League again, or for him to do something on the international stage with Portugal in the senior side,
which isn't an impossibility, by the way. Portugal have a really impressive side going into the Euros. Whether he gets Neves going to break into it, not a guarantee. But if he did, and they went deep and did something special, then I don't think it's an impossibility. The issue, I think, is at 19, playing in a defensive midfield role in one of the top leagues, like maybe the Premier League. Does he have the physicality to come in and make an impact in that position? Now, I'm not saying that's all you rely on in that role, but I think it's a big ask when you're spending 100 million on somebody. I think you have to be quite a complete package, and I think João Neves, maybe it is a year too early for him, even though he's an amazing player.
He also does have quite a lot of freedom. Like, you do see him kind of popping up on the right wing and stuff, and like, he is quite, although his dribble numbers aren't actually amazing, like, he is capable of that. He does have good technique out there, so I feel like he still needs to hone his skills and maybe even become more of a specialist, to be honest. But nevertheless, a really exciting talent.
Yeah, very big shout. My first one, I think, is a nailed on for our final 5 at the end. Has to be in there for me, Warren Zaire-Emery.
Yeah.
Who has just been a revelation for PSG this season, really. Obviously made his full France debut this year as well, or in 2023, so this season. And what he's added to that PSG midfield with the exits of players like Marco Verratti, I don't think can be undersold. Like, he plays like a 26, 27-year-old. He's still only 17. This is a player who, you know, we talk about João Neves doing bits in the UEFA Youth League. I think at 14 was playing in the under-19 side, PSG. I think he was actually promoted to the PSG first team by Poch. So the fact that, you know, we all deride
Mauricio Pochettino as well,
yeah, we all, like, he's openly been derided, Pochettino, as having a terrible time at PSG. Maybe the kind of last shining light, his sort of legacy might be Warren Zaire-Emery getting promoted to the first team, because, you know, what Luis Enrique's been able to get out of him this season is nothing short of remarkable. I think he started all but 3 competitive games for PSG, and that was down to an injury. He's exceptional offensively, but also defensively. I think we've seen that in the Champions League in particular, where he's bailed PSG out a number of times. He's won a Champions League Man of the Match. I think that might have been away, actually, at the San Siro. Don't quote me on that. I can't remember which game it was in now. But he is just the complete midfielder. Like, his size, his physicality, his calmness on the ball, his passing range, coupled with, you know, defensive nous and intelligence. At 17, like, I haven't seen a midfielder do it for an awfully long time. Probably like Gavi, maybe the last one to do that, like Pedri, that sort of level. You know, Jude Bellingham. We're talking about that level of player who are all now, you know, I think, what's Pedri, 21 now? Yeah. Bellingham's 20, so he's 3 years on these players. We're going to discuss Gavi in a little bit as well. But this season, in terms of breakout teenagers, I think Warren Zaire-Emery has to. Yeah. He almost takes the biscuit for me. Like, I think he's just incredible.
He's come through at a convenient time as well, because obviously PSG have moved away from the kind of big signings, big players, and it's just one of the ones where it's nice to see that they're implementing their youth properly, because we've seen countless PSG prospects go away. You know,
he's one in a million, really, isn't he?
Well, I'd say Kim Pembe, who's the only player I can really think of that's come through the academy and actually plays for PSG.
Stuck about. Yeah.
So it's a nice they've got their kind of shining light when they're shifting the whole club's ethos, really. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, French going to the Euros again. I think he probably will make the squad. Obviously, you could look at that squad that he was called up to and say, Tchouaméni wasn't part of it. He was injured. Was that a reflection on the fact that Zaire-Emery got called up because of that? I think he'll get called up despite that, even alongside the likes of Tchouaméni. I think he's got to go to the Euros. I don't necessarily think he'll be a starter.
No.
Because, Deschamps, I think he values the experienced players in that midfield role. That's why we've seen Tchouaméni take a while to break in. But now that Tchouaméni's in there, I think it would take a couple of injuries for Zaire-Emery to at least become a starter. But I think he's definitely going to go to the Euros as a squad player. And at 17 in the deepest squad of any European nation, I think that's it's pretty bloody mad. There's not many 17-year-old French players breaking in.
Yeah, and may well be a Euros winner by the middle of the summer.
It won't be, mate. That'll be England.
I'm calling it though, England-France final, I reckon. First big prediction out there.
Who have you got, Jimbo?
Yeah, so I'll stick with your midfields. Arthur Vermeeren, a player that many may not have heard of. Admittedly, I hadn't, until I found about his move to Atleti this gone transfer window. Yeah, so basically he's coming through. He's kind of the next player off the Belgian conveyor belt of just unbelievable technical ability. When you look on his FB ref, it's like a vegetarian's dream. Like, everything's just green. It's ridiculous. He's the ability. Like, if I was a football player, I'm awful at actually playing football. But the way I would like to play football is exactly how he plays football. The ability to get in between the opposition and man to make the tackle. Just that simple ability is, I've never seen it before in a football player. It's very, very unique in the fact that if you have a mildly bad touch, he's in between you and the ball. And
so is he a defensive midfielder?
Defensive midfielder. He's not very tall. He's 5'9". His aerial numbers kind of represent that. He's not very good in terms of the physical battle of a defensive midfielder. But in terms of what he gives you in terms of progressive numbers, carrying, passing, he often, he goes for the pass more than the carry, but pulls it off amazingly well. It's just another player that you can just see, similarly to Zaire-Emery, going into the Belgian Euros I would like to see him start, because I've seen lots of good from him, but I don't think he's quite got the rapport yet to actually start for Belgium. But for Antwerp, he was incredible. When he joined, they hadn't won the league in 66 years, and he helped them win that and a cup double. As I said, moved on to Atleti this summer, but in the previous half season has been phenomenal for Antwerp again. Champions League, their first time in God knows how long. Fair enough, they lost all but one game, but in that one game they won was against Barcelona. He was man of the match and got a goal. So he's really put himself on the map, got his move. I don't think we'll see much of him this season, because obviously you've got time with him. You know the quality's there.
Simeone takes a while to.
Yeah, you can slowly. But I mean, when it comes to defensive midfielders, Atleti have a great reputation of bringing, or at least finding, the next best. So it's really promising that he's moved to Atleti, a club that should really kind of embody what he's good at. And I'm really excited because there's not many defensive midfielders of his size pulling out the numbers that he is. So he's a player that just uses pure footballing knowledge and ability and kind of maturity at a very young age to overcome his weakness, which is the physicality. So for me, it's I really, really appreciate, I can't really appreciate where he's going to be, but he's a player that I'm very excited for, because he's the kind of player that I would like to replicate, if I'm playing football. He's very clean in the tackle as well. Yeah, I'm very excited to see where this goes.
Simeone, take note, mate. James wants to join the academy.
Oh God, no.
Yeah, can I just ruin this player?
But it is. But I guess they haven't really had. I mean, Koke's obviously been moved to that defensive role in recent seasons, but they haven't had a real top class specialist basically since Rodri went to Man City.
He's not purely defensively midfield though. He he's more of a box to box. He will push up further. Like his assist numbers, literally everything is green on FBref. Like you'll be amazed at the numbers he's pulling out.
So we'll see what Simeone does. But to be fair, like Atleti are evolving as well, haven't they, in the last year? So and they just need to rejuvenate that squad still. Yeah. Like Simeone has kind of worked wonders, but yeah, it's still a pretty old squad. So that's pretty exciting. Should we move on to my second one? Yeah. Again, I'm going to go with a big hitter. This is probably someone who I imagine is going to make the top 5 as well.
It's going to be number 1, I think.
Do you think? I'll go for Lamine Yamal. Yeah. Lamine Yamal. I actually, despite obviously having seen a decent amount of him this season, I didn't quite appreciate before looking at his numbers just how ridiculous this guy is. Like at 16 years of age, he doesn't turn 17 until June.
It's crazy.
Obviously broke into this Barcelona side, slightly as a result of what's happened in recent seasons. That's why Gavi, got his call up so early, because Barcelona were having to, were kind of forced to use La Masia. Players who probably wouldn't break into the side until 18, 19 are being called upon a couple of years early. But to be honest, with Yamal, it kind of feels like time. Like I think Yamal at this age looks more impressive than Ansu Fati did at 16. And Ansu Fati was, had broken into that side at that age in 2019. That seemed like ridiculous.
More physical, more power in his dribble, more pace.
It's strange because
he has it.
He doesn't look like strong as he
but when
is
you see
on
him run with the ball,
he's so good at manipulating his body.
So powerful.
Yeah, and you kind of back him to just go between two defenders and make it through, which like at that age, and obviously when you're a teenager you can kind of wriggle through players a bit, but physically he really is there. But it's more striking for me is that he's playing in a Barcelona side which at points this season has been very dysfunctional, has been despite Real Madrid having all the injuries that they've had, and actually in the first stage of the season needing Bellingham to bail them out of some games in which they could have lost or drawn. Barcelona are so often, despite having made some quite significant signings last summer, Gundogan and Cancelo, for example, Joao Felix as well, and yet Yamal is still ranking among the top players in La Liga for almost every attacking metric. He's 5th for passes into the penalty area. Let's also remember he's made 12 starts, so half of his games have come off the bench. 5th for passes into the penalty area in total in the whole league. 3rd for expected assists per 90. 5th for goal creating actions in total, despite playing far fewer minutes than a lot of other attackers. 2nd for goal creating actions per 90. Nico Williams is the only person ahead of him. 7th for progressive passes received, so he's already incredibly well trusted in that Barca side. 9th for carries into the penalty area. 7th for successful dribbles. I know that's a lot of numbers there, but it just shows that most players, most young attackers, no matter how exciting they look, he's also two-footed dribbler as well, which sets him apart and actually probably contributes to the point that I'm about to make. Most attackers at that age, really exciting to watch, can change a game potentially with a piece of skill or a wonder goal or whatever, but they often lack consistent end product. And yet Lamine Yamal at the age of 16 has the fireworks, also so far has displayed consistent end products. Like you just don't usually get that with young attackers like that. You look at someone like Alejandro Garnacho last year, even now still lacks consistent end product, even if he looks really exciting. Even someone like Ansu Fati in the early days, although maybe he isn't the best example, but Lamine Yamal just for someone at that age, I can't really remember anyone at that level, probably since Messi at Barcelona, and obviously I'm not going to make that comparison, but probably at that age. I think Messi came into the Barca team when he was 16, 17, and obviously looked electric.
Mbappe's final product.
Mbappe, but even Mbappe was a bit older, I guess. But Mbappe's final product was always brilliant. But Yamal seems to have that both creatively and in a goal scoring sense, which makes it crazy that he's only scored 3 goals and 2 assists. Got 3 goals and 2 assists this season in the league. 2 of those goals coming against Granada on the weekend. He is just ridiculous. And you just got to pray that he isn't overworked until he gets injured, because we've seen that happen with Ansu Fati, we've seen that happen with Pedri, which has been a real shame. So it's hard to look back. Gavi as well.
Shall I just quickly mention Gavi? I think he's worth a shout just because of his high level prior to the ACL injury. Obviously,
he probably is kind of number one, but he's not necessarily been a breakthrough this season.
And this season, obviously, this is what we're talking about this season. Obviously, he's had the ACL injury in November playing for Spain, hasn't featured since. But before that, his level was still extremely high. We're talking about not necessarily one of the best youngsters in sort of Europe, but one of the best central midfielders in Europe. His tenacity off the ball, his ability on the ball, it's just a massive miss for Barcelona with Gavi's absence. And I feel like a little bit I don't know whether it's been talked about enough how detrimental that's been to Xavi and Barcelona's campaign, losing Gavi for basically the whole season. It's basically scuppered all of their plans. And at 19, you look at the amount of minutes he played in that breakthrough and second season, and you think to yourself, it was too many. Because I think there was a stat, wasn't there? He played something like 70 games across all competitions.
And that's the thing. It's not only on whoever's been in charge at Barcelona, because I know he came in under Ronald Koeman. Actually, he barely played under Ronald Koeman, but that was who was managing. That was who gave his debut, and then Xavi took over. So obviously Xavi has to take responsibility for that, but also Luis Enrique has to take responsibility for bringing him into the Spain setup straight away, much like he did with Pedri as well. And Pedri was a star and everything, and Gavi's been brilliant for Spain as well, but it's there has to be some joined up thinking there, surely, when you've got one of the best players that your country has produced in recent years, best players that your club has produced in recent years. There has to be some sort of safeguarding there.
And it's just it's frightening, isn't it? 1100 minutes he played before his injury, I think. So some of the players we're going to talk about, or at least on my list, are still in and around 1100 minutes.
Yamal's only just surpassed that.
Exactly, over a prolonged period of time. So even then you can see how many minutes and how key Gavi was to this Xavi system. And it's not even necessarily, I think, about the minutes. It's about what he brings to the team in terms of tone setting. His ability to get involved in battles is half of what makes Gavi so special, I think, and that does energise the team a little bit like Lisandro Martinez does for Manchester United. That aggression energises the rest of the team, and without that, I think Barcelona have looked a little bit nice at times, frankly, this season. And for Gavi at 19, that's pretty special. It's a pretty special trait, and we already know about his technical ability, so I don't think we should talk too much more about him. But he's probably still got to be mentioned as the best, if not one of the best teenagers in world football.
I think he probably is the best. He's the most developed teenager in world football, isn't he? So I think he basically is. Maybe he would lose out just because we haven't, obviously he's been injured, but last season was a truly, a really special season for him. This season, not as much, I guess.
Jimbo.
Sticking it in La Liga, Savio. Headlines at the moment.
Headlines.
It's a bit of a strange one with Savio. My general feelings with him, because obviously he's the poster boy for the SFG project.
The CFG,
CFG. What did I say?
SFG.
You're a terrible ambassador for that.
But it's start off at Troyes. I think the plan was to get him on loan, get him some minutes, and then bring him back into the setup. But things aren't going great at the moment there. Obviously, relegation last season. I'm definitely not a good ambassador about to say, but they've kind of uprooted what was existing in Troyes and made a bit more CFG friendly, which has kind of scuppered their season last season and might be the reason that they actually got relegated. They obviously saw that and thought, no, we can't, put him back into Ligue 2 or put him into Ligue 2. Let's get him to Girona on loan, and it's been brilliant. In terms of him, he's been phenomenal. 24 games, nearly 2,000 minutes, 5 league goals and 7 assists, I believe. But his one-on-one ability is crazy. The pace he has is crazy. His crossing is extremely good for someone that young. Usually you get these kind of explosive, powerful, tricky wingers come through at a very young age, and that's all they're about. They haven't got the output, but his crossing ability is perfect. And obviously we've seen links, or 20 to 30 million bounded. He's going to come to City at the end of the season, which is strange because his contract's also up this summer. So you take that and run with it how you will. But
strange.
But genuinely, I can see him being in this City side next season on the left side.
What do you reckon? What with Doku and
Grealish? Doku plays on the right naturally.
But
so Grealish, it's going to be the same rotation for Grealish.
What does that mean for Oscar Bob?
Oscar Bob, give him time, give him minutes, which usher them in, which is important because we've just spoken about Gavi being run into the ground. One thing City have done really well, which is why the Foden argument really annoyed me for all these years, is he the main man? No, we're taking our time, we're taking our care. City, like a few of these clubs, I'm going to mention this later on, are in a position where we can take our time with youngsters and see them through without kind of overusing them. And Savio will hopefully be put into that category if he does come to City. But in terms of what he brings to a side, it's any side. When I first saw him, not realising that we're going to City proposed to buy him, I just saw him at Liverpool. I thought he's like the perfect Liverpool Klopp winger, where you've got that kind of like, he sees his man, he beats his man, he gets the ball into the box as quickly as possible, whether it be him or cross. And it's going to be very, very strange next season having a 23-year-old Haaland, Doku who's 21, and then him who's going to be 20 as a front line, and the output's going to be crazy. He's a very special player. I think obviously what Girona are doing is incredible itself, and he's the poster boy of CFG, poster boy of Girona. The big move's coming, so we're just going to hear a lot more about him over the next few years.
Okay, Savio, any other suggestions from you, Mike?
Yes, Shall I stick with Barcelona? I mean, I'll briefly mention him because we obviously haven't seen loads of him at Barca. Obviously, got that really unfortunate red card against Alaves.
One way of putting it.
Just what a ridiculous second yellow that was. Obviously, Vitor Roque, his move to Barca was brought forward. Was supposed to happen this summer coming. They managed to make it work to bring him in January from Atletico Paranaense, and already has 2 goals in La Liga. Looks pretty bright. 19-year-old. Turns 19 at the end of this month. Scored against Osasuna a minute after coming off the bench. That was the winner in that game. Really, really good headed finish. Just seems to be a pretty well-rounded number 9. Vitor Roque. 21 goals last season in Brazil. He was the youngest player to score in the Cup for Cruzeiro before he went to Paranaense. Made the Copa Libertadores Team of the Year in 2022. So has a ton of pedigree already. We were speaking about him even towards the end of, like kind of in April, May time last year when Barcelona were first looking to sign him. It can take a lot for a player to make that transition from Brazil to Spain or to a top 5 league and be at the level already. But he looks pretty comfortable in that Barca side. It's very much, I think, the example of Barcelona, finally kind of pulling their finger out in terms of, I guess, copying Real Madrid's kind of game plan in the South American market. They did do it with Neymar, which interestingly was the trigger for Real Madrid to work harder in that market. But Neymar was 11 years ago now. Barcelona signed Neymar.
Junior Calafat has been killing it for Madrid.
Calafat has in the meantime been absolutely mopping up. But I know by June Vitor Roque might not even be able to be registered. I think he will. I think Barcelona will probably will sell De Jong and do whatever else in order.
They've got to get them wages off the books. They can't continue to pay him $700,000 a week.
Yeah, and so far they've they've managed to make it happen in terms of registering the players that they want, the new signings, and they've have sacked off current or more established members of the squad in order to do that. I see that very much happening with Roque because, like Lewandowski, has shown this season that he was not a good investment at 45 million pounds.
Plus the wages.
Yeah, plus the wages. Even if he was, even if he did have a good impact last season, like Barcelona need a long-term centre forward, and obviously Roque offers that. He looks like the future of that forward line, like him, Yamal, and then the left-hand side, I guess, is a little bit less sure of that in the long term. Will Rafinha stay there long term? I'm not so sure. Lots of question marks for Barcelona going into this summer. But one thing I'm pretty sure of is that Roque will be given priority over other players.
Yeah. While we're talking about young Brazilians, I think we should mention Endrick here. Now we're talking about this season. Obviously, Mikey's mentioned Vitor Roque there. The Brazilian season obviously is adapted, isn't it? It's February to December, so it is slightly different. So I'm going to have to kind of talk about 2023 Endrick, really. Obviously, everybody knows he's going to be joining Real Madrid in July, and it's been, hyped up to death, hasn't he? And I think that is the one thing about Endrick, is you're clearly seeing the emergence of, maybe I don't want to say a media darling, but there is something special about Endrick, isn't there?
You've already seen him in like the in the designer clubber and everyone.
Front covers of GQ, his photos, the iconic photos.
Every picture of him looks like a picture from like the 60s, like of a superstar.
He's got 5 or 6 major endorsement deals. He signed to New Balance. He feels very much like the guy who's emerging, a media darling, a star potentially in the making. But actually, in 2023. Didn't have the best time of it. I think he started 5 of his club's first 36 games in all competitions last season. And in Brazil, there were some people kind of saying, where is Endrick? Why is he not playing here? Like, what's going on? Because the breakout campaign prior to that was so strong that I think people expected him just to continue to go to new levels. And at 17, that isn't always the case. Progression isn't just a straight line. There are ups and downs here. And he was dropped from the side at times. And I think he's been open about that. There's those sort of famous images of him coming off the bench or coming onto the bench and then crying on the substitutes bench. And I think people have derided him at times a little bit in Brazil, but back end of the year, October, November, really started to come into his own again, scored an awful lot of goals, got his Brazil call up, although some people in Brazil, some of the Brazil media were questioning that, kind of saying, is this sort of a media call up? Has he been called up because he's this sort of superstar in the making and going to Real Madrid rather than his actual output? But nevertheless, we're talking about, I think, the 4th youngest player ever to play for Brazil, a 17-year-old who Real Madrid have put an awful lot of eggs in his basket. They obviously rate him extremely highly. He was talking about, I read an interview with him, that Juni Calafate kind of flies to see him once a month, has dinner at his family home and makes sure that everything's okay. Obviously, he's a very special player. I guess the question marks come, how does he fit into the front line with the signing or the proposed signing of Kylian Mbappe? Does he play through the middle? Much of his success in the second half of the season, October and November, actually came playing in a front 2, where he wasn't the solo guy. And do I see Real Madrid playing with a front 2? Not really. I think maybe it's
not unless Vinicius gets injured. I just don't think that happens.
Is it going to be a Vinicius, Mbappe, Endrick front line, or what does that mean for Rodrigo? Is he going to have to play a little bit wider, Endrick? We've seen him not do that so successfully in 2023, so I think there are a few question marks as to how he fits into that Carlo Ancelotti team, but nevertheless, I think you can see this is probably a superstar in the making. 11 goals in the Brazilian Serie A in 2023. I think very, very clear physically he's an abnormality. At 16 he doesn't look like a 16-year-old. The legs, we're talking about a serious physical presence here. He's bullying men twice his age, so strong in the dribble and on the ball, and his finishing is obviously exceptional, but he is like a striker. And like, how does that fit with Mbappe? Does Mbappe want to play with him? Like, I don't know. Maybe Mbappe doesn't happen, and we don't have to answer these questions.
I mean, Mbappe generally has does prefer to play off the striker, doesn't he, rather than as the centre forward. At least that's always been the kind of noises that have come out of him at PSG. But then then he's competing with Vinicius or Rodrigo or potentially.
But this is what happens at Real Madrid, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're joining a club full of superstars as a 17-year-old. You're not expecting to be the superstar. You're going to have to compete for that position and prove yourself.
Vinicius took 2 years to properly.
And that might well be the case as well for Endrick. But either way, I think when we're talking about the best teenagers in world football, he has to have a mention. I think we're all very excited. I'm just kind of more intrigued.
Yeah.
Like, how's he actually? What is this guy going to be able to bring to Madrid? Why are they so hot on Endrick, and why is everybody saying that he's going to be a superstar? So let's see. He's still only 17, man. Like, he's making his debuts at 15 in the Brazilian top flight.
But it does feel like he's had more hype than any Brazilian teenager, maybe since Neymar.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's fair enough.
I think there's probably more.
And you look at that Palmeiras side.
Because you've had Neymar.
It's incredible. Like that Palmeiras side is basically decimating Brazil, and like he's been a linchpin in it at 15 and 16 years old. It's bizarre.
Do you think he can handle that pressure? Because obviously, like, there's that pressure from Brazil, which Neymar experienced, but after Neymar, I think it's even more pressure.
Yeah, I think it's a bit weird actually. Like in Brazil, he's one of the few players. I was reading a few articles on him in preparation for this. He's one of the few players that is kind of bridging the cross-club divide, where there are some quite partisan lines drawn in Brazil between teams, and saying because he plays for Palmeiras, I hate him. I really don't like him, and because he plays for Santos, I hate him. I don't like him as a rival fan. Whereas Endrick kind of crosses the divide where everybody seems to love him, and I think that is partly down to the fact that he is seen as the new face of Brazilian football. He's seen as people have painted him as the next Pele. I think let's not get ridiculous, but because he's started to get monikers like that, I think people in Brazil have effectively been like, we can't really start hating on the guy who might well be the face of our national team for the next 10 years. So he's got a lot of love in Brazil. He's definitely going to have a lot of love in Spain, and now it's just time to see if he can live up to it.
A player similarly that is very difficult to dislike, Evan Ferguson.
What's happened to his minutes this season though, Jim?
Well, he's got more this season than the whole of last season.
It doesn't feel like
only by 200, but I think it's as I was saying before, it's a luxury that Brighton have, that they don't have to play him. It would be nice because he is still incredible. He's got 6 Premier League goals this season, and you wouldn't think it because he just doesn't feel like he's played.
I mean, 3 of those came in one game, didn't they?
Yeah, true.
Was it Newcastle he scored the hat-trick against?
Yeah, and it was quite a
hat-trick.
That was great.
I think some they got. There was one goal in particular that was like slightly clumsy that made me feel like okay, this is quite a lucky hat-trick. But it's still
one that was like 25 yards out, rifle bottom corner.
Yeah. But it's one of them ones where it's like everyone knows about Evan Ferguson. Similarly with like Endrick and Gavi, like these are. Well, actually, differently from them two, he hasn't got the minutes to back it up, but we can already see the potential. He's got everything you need in terms of a striker, a big bullying striker for a very young age. Like Endrick bullying men, Evan Ferguson bullies men, and he's just off the conveyor belt of Brighton's amazing talent recognition.
I do love Evan Ferguson, but I have, if we were talking this time last season, I think there was maybe more hype about him. Like, I don't know whether I was expecting this summer he would be £100 million moving striker. Like I was really expecting one of the top teams would go, do you know what, look what he's done this season. He's got even better, he's gone to new levels, got more minutes. I think somebody's going to come in and pay massive fees for him. I wouldn't be surprised this summer to see him just stay at Brighton again.
I think this,
and that's not a disrespect. I'm not trying to disrespect him there because I think he's a fabulous player, but I don't know whether, I think João Pedro has eaten up a few of his minutes, definitely a few of his goals, and has kind of come to the forefront of De Zerbi's thinking of what he wants from a number 9.
Well, that's the luxury that they have. They've got someone who's also incredibly young, performing, João Pedro, in Europe as well. And it's I genuinely think it was a tactic by Brighton to kind of let people forget, because no one's going to pay Brighton another 100 million for a player. So I think they would go, okay, let's have Evan Ferguson, let's do what we would do normally. Let's pretend nobody wants him. Let's try and usher him into the squad properly, which I think is what we should be doing as a kind of, every club should be doing, not forcing the Gavis to playing every single minute, that ruins them by the end of the age of 25. And for Evan Ferguson, a player who you can see the physicality in his game. if he's got slight injuries, knocks, I can see it building up and it ruining him as a player. So the fact that Brighton have kind of staved off everyone by just not playing him as much and just operating like they should, for someone of his age, I think is amazing. And I'm really excited, really happy that he's not got the links to United anymore.
Do you think he will leave this summer?
I don't think he will.
I'm not
sure because I think it was always going to be a Premier League club that would come in for him, and then when you look at the Premier League clubs who would pay 100 mil, like actually most clubs are kind of sorted in the centre forward. You know, I guess Chelsea would be the one, wouldn't
Arsenal
it? Chelsea
potentially looking for a number 9, Tottenham potentially looking for a number 9.
I just don't think Arsenal go for a number 9 as young as Evan Ferguson. I think Arsenal, if Arsenal are going to spend a lot of money on a number 9,
it'll be Osman.
It has to be a player who has already scored 15 to 20 goals a season. I don't think they can take a risk on someone like Ferguson, who brilliant attributes, but so far we haven't seen him score on a kind of 5 goals in 5 games, 6 goals in 6 games kind of basis. When there's that kind of pressure around Arsenal in terms of their goal scoring, like I think you have to see Evan Ferguson score 15 goals in the Premier League before they do that. Chelsea would be the only one, but how much money can Chelsea actually spend this summer? How many players are they going to be able to offload this summer?
Spuds? Not necessarily 100, but if that price dropped to 70 or so.
Yeah, I mean, difficult one though, because Richarlison. This is the thing. This is all kind of circumstantial at the moment, but Richarlison's playing really well at the moment and scoring for fun. Even I know Man United probably wouldn't spend another 100 mil, but even Man United, where we centre forward was a problem before, Højlund seems to be growing into that side as well. And then outside of the big boys, you have like Aston Villa, and they're definitely not in need of a striker at this moment in time.
And would never go near that fee.
Tottenham were looking at Antonio Nusa before, for 30 million euros. I just don't think 100 million is in their budget for a striker. Like, I think they will have to spend 70 to 80 million to eventually replace Son. But do they replace Son with someone in the mould of Evan Ferguson? I'm just not so sure. I'm not so sure. I think they want someone a bit more all round. I think they'd probably want a wide inside forward, I think, rather than a centre forward like Ferguson.
Yeah. Are we sticking in the Premier League? Next suggestions?
I think so. Yeah, Lewis Miley at Newcastle. I think, in terms of, I think it's actually pretty remarkable what he's done. Like, to be 17 and to be called into that first team and be required to start almost every single game since coming in an injury crisis for a Newcastle team, which, despite all the investment, has looked threadbare with the injuries that they've had. They've had a lot of injuries, but it also goes to show that, it's a work in progress still, Newcastle, to come into a side which overperformed last season, which has had more pressure on them this year, has been brilliant. The one sub appearance he made, he scored against Fulham in that 3-0 win. 12 of his 13 appearances have been starts. He just looks he looks great. I don't think he's one of those players that you don't want to put too much pressure on at this point, because he did receive a lot of hype after his first few appearances. But he's not the star in that team, or I don't think he'll be the star in that team for a good while. And when that entire midfield is fit, I don't think he gets into that midfield either. But at 17, to show his ability to.
And Joe Linton's out of contract, I believe, is he, or his contract's coming right
like
down?
That.
Maybe.
Yeah, there is talk about
contract issues potentially developing there.
Yeah, there is talk about Joe Linton potentially leaving in the summer, and I guess what Miley does give you is that that midfield ability, but also that ability to go into wide areas as well. And to be honest, I think if there's going to be one big signing this summer for Newcastle, it surely has to be a right winger. But in the meantime, Lewis Miley's addition to that side has helped minimise the kind of deficiencies in that area. I know like Almiron on his day is great, but there isn't really any backup to him.
Well, they have Harvey Barnes out for the whole season, haven't they?
Harvey Barnes,
you might think of a front three of like Isaac, Barnes, Gordon might actually work in some way.
Like having Barnes on the right,
maybe Barnes on the right, and that's not his classic position, or you move Gordon out there, or like.
I still think they would need a right winger just to be where they want to be.
But I just think money could be very tight.
Well, and even Miley out there, I don't think is the worst shout. But like, he gets around the pitch so much. Like, he's really suited to that 4-3-3 system that Eddie Powell plays. You know, Howe has already talked a lot about how he's really impressed by Miley's intelligence, and you know, I guess also a real plus is that Miley at 17, he hasn't really known the club really without Eddie Howe. You know, Eddie has been there for what, 2 years, almost 2 years and a half at this point. So to have that kind of consistent coaching, someone who has been good with young players in the past, someone who has drilled that side so well in a defensive sense, I think is ideal for a player of that age, who I think at heart Miley is an attacking midfielder, but the defensive side of his game that he's shown since breaking into the side has been super impressive. So I think if he's not relied upon too much over the next year or so, and he can just kind of continue to develop in training, and still be called upon, but maybe not at quite the same rate. I think we should see him develop into
definitely
really
had a breakout season. I think Lewis Miley,
definitely.
I'm going to say Alejandro Garnacho. As my second to final one. I just think that he's taken strides I wasn't necessarily expecting him to take. Like, I thought he was going to be a really good player, but he's definitely gone from a player that had more impact off the bench. You know, he was better in the final 20 minutes than as a starter for me at the start of the season. 100%. Now he's an integral starter in that Manchester United side. I think he's found a home on the right, which probably has surprised him and Erik ten Hag. We all thought he was going to be more of a left winger. I actually think he's more effective off the right because he can beat people on the outside. He works really well with Dalot. His defensive work has improved no end. You know, he's probably the better of the two defensively out wide now, out with him and Marcus Rashford. I think it's 20 starts in a row as well in all competitions, which is a lot of minutes for Alejandro Garnacho. Wouldn't be saying that at the start of the season. You know, he's definitely usurped Antony in terms of the manager's thinking, and although Antony is badly out of form, you know, he was still signed for 80-odd million by Erik ten Hag. He was Erik ten Hag's go-to man out wide, and Garnacho has taken his position, taken his shirt. Like, he's
in a way that Sancho wasn't able to last year.
Certainly, absolutely. And I think even with Rashford's dips in form, he's arguably become the second forward on the team sheet behind Rasmus Højlund, who I think, has in the second half of the season certainly taken massive strides. I think Alejandro Garnacho has probably been Man United's best forward across the entire campaign. So although I don't think he's in the category of some of these other players, I don't necessarily think he's Lamine Yamal level at the moment. I think he's taking strides at a very rapid rate. You look at some of the stuff numbers wise that pops on him, like progressive carries. He's extremely hard to stop in the 1v1. We saw against Aston Villa, even though there was a couple of one that went very narrowly wide and one kind of scuff shot, when he gets motoring, he's extremely hard to stop. You have to bring him down, even though he's slight. His dribbling and balance is really impressive. So I think Garnacho deserves a shout out here. I don't think he's necessarily going to be in the final 5, but we're going to probably talk about Kobbie Mainoo. And I think in terms of teenagers at Man United, across the course of the season, the whole season, I think Garnacho has probably been the better teenager.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, I mean, Mainoo's only came into the team in December, right?
Yeah, because of the injury.
One thing I will say about Garnacho, there's something about him where, like, I feel he's I'm trying to say this in a nice way, like, he's so obsessed with Ronaldo.
Yeah, it seems like he's got a lot of drive, doesn't he?
And like, he wants to replicate that. He wants to kind of prove him. This is just me kind of coming up with a complete nonsense thing, but like, it feels like he's so desperate to impress Ronaldo and replicate what Ronaldo does that he will continually get better. Like, you've seen the improvements already, the willingness to go on the right, and as we say, usurp Jadon Sancho and Antony, who've come in for big money, big reputations, and I think it's incredible. But Kobbie Mainoo, I wanted to shout out because I think playing for Manchester United, like coming up from from any team, being a teenager, playing in the first team is an incredible achievement. But to do it at Man United in their current predicament with the pressure that comes with it is incredible. Like Garnacho, you've got to give him all the the props for what he's done so far, and Kobbie Mainoo exactly the same. The calmness, the intelligence, the maturity of him already, and this is I would love to bag on him because I'm a Man City fan, but I just can't. Like, he is exactly what Man United need in the midfield.
It's what we needed for about 10 years.
And it's incredible that he came in and like near enough from the first kick of a football. He's been consistent. There has been not a single like negative to his game. And he's also the brother of Jordan from Love Island, which it blew my mind. Just thought I'd throw that out. But genuinely, as a rival fan, seeing Kobbie Mainoo come up and just be so natural in everything he does, and he seems like he's got a cool head above that as well. If someone gives him a kick, he doesn't seem like the kind of person that'd be rattled by it. He's an extremely mature player for his age, and like when I look at young players, you can see kind of technical ability. Like everyone at this level has technical ability. They're all great players, but it's the mentality, it's the drive, it's the composure that really sets players apart. This is age reigns regardless, and for him to be where he's at his age is incredible. I think we're seeing the start of like a Man United captain for like a generation, and I genuinely think he'll be phenomenal for Manchester United.
He certainly is. I think probably the most press resistant midfielder United have had since Michael Carrick, maybe. Like, I know that's Pogba as well. To be fair, Pogba as well. But in terms of like someone who, at least so far, looks like he's very much suited to a deep lying role, I feel like Mainoo, more so than Pogba in some ways, just because Pogba was, to be honest, always at his best with United when he was given more of an attacking license and was given a bit more of a flair role, whereas there was only maybe a 3-4 month period where Pogba really excelled as more of a sitting player, and it just never really suited him. Whereas Mainoo, I think, he can do a lot, but so far he's been so effective at actually stabilising Man United's midfield, which is just crazy when you consider he's 18 years old, and players 28-year-olds, 29-year-olds with tons of experience have not been able to do that at United. So it is pretty special, and inevitably there will come a point where he has a run of 1 or 2 months where he's not playing so well and the defensive structure around him isn't so good, and he'll be a bit under pressure, and maybe United do spend more on a midfielder in the summer.
They've got to buy a midfielder anyway.
I feel like they probably will. But but the fact that he's like seems to have brought out the best in Casemiro recently, speaks volumes about like the maturity on him, and just the technical ability. Obviously, we talk about that goal against Wolves, but like the Scott McTominay doesn't score the winner against Aston Villa if Mainoo doesn't pull off that bit of footwork to lay it off to Dalot there. Like just those little bits. He can kind of get around the pitch and get the ball out of tight spaces and stuff. And that plus his kind of tactical intelligence as defensive nous, really sets him apart. Like, we haven't really seen a player come through like that from the United Academy in God knows how long. Like usually United have been great at producing exciting attackers out of the academy, kind of flair players, but like someone like Mainoo, he's the kind of guy that you expect to see come out of, say, a kind of City Academy or La Masia, like that kind of technical level.
Last names. We'll fly through a couple of these.
I'll go through. I mean, this is someone who's got some of the most minutes out of all teenagers in Europe this season. Hugo Larsson at Eintracht Frankfurt, I think, deserves a shout. Still pretty raw, but playing in has made 18 starts. I think he's the 5th most used player in a Frankfurt side who I think have clearly been the kind of best of the rest in the Bundesliga this season. Obviously, there's that kind of top 5 who I think are a level above everyone else. Dortmund, arguable, but Frankfurt, 6th this season, have generally had great pedigree in the Bundesliga over the last few years, but under a new manager in Dino Topmoller this year, Hugo Larsson came in the summer, had made 61 appearances for Malmo in his native Sweden. Before that, he's got 4 caps for Sweden now. Sadly, he's out until March with a hamstring injury, so Frankfurt will have to having to deal without him at the moment, but just has really good. Just looks like a really good all-round midfielder. Scored a great goal on his weak foot against Bayern Munich in December. Did Upamecano with some footwork before slotting home, and I know Upamecano. I know Upamecano once again after a Champions League knockout tie has his name is being dragged through the mud. Bless him. I don't know what he was thinking with that tackle against Lazio, but he just looks like a really good all-round midfielder. He's quite lanky, but has a really good touch on him. Really good on the turn. Like good in transition, defensively pretty sound. I feel like he's one of those midfielders who, when he fills out a little bit more, will be really, really tough to stop. Like I think physically already he's quite impressive, but he still looks a little bit skinny. I feel like when he fills out a little bit more, he will look like a really, really top class box-to-box midfielder. And I expect him, probably not to stay at Frankfurt much longer than a season or 2 more. Yeah,
I think that's a good shout, an outside shout. I'm going to do mine very quickly because he's had barely any minutes, frankly. But I think it's worth just mentioning Matthias Tell at Bayern Munich.
Definitely.
Look, I think he's actually played 24 games this season, but it's
all off the bench.
All off the bench, obviously. And it's an average of 22 minutes a game. Yeah. So, yes, his numbers are incredible. We see the amount of goals per minute. It does look outstanding. I keep seeing that stat on Twitter. It's like ridiculous goals per minute. But it is against tired defences in a Bayern Munich team that's extremely dominant. And he's coming on. And in some games he's having impacts. There have been winners in there. But mostly he's coming on against tired defences with a lights-out Bayern Munich attack that are looking to pile on misery. And he's scoring goals in that environment. Like, he has scored fairly big goals. You think the Copenhagen goal. But I think there's a lot more to come from Matthias Tell, and my worry is, does that come at Bayern Munich? I really struggle, especially when Coman's back and Serge Gnabry's back. I struggle to see where do his starts come.
With Kane
with
signed
Kane
for that money
there as well on such a long-term, high-profile deal.
See, I genuinely think that
I think he needs a loan,
it's the opposite.
Maybe he needs a loan.
I agree with that, but I do think Bayern Munich see him as a long-term heir to Harry Kane. They're ushering him in with it. They're making sure that he learns with Harry Kane. And when Kane's deal's done, that Tell steps in. I think it's very, I don't want to say obvious, but it's very clear that their intentions are that Matthias Tell is the future of Bayern Munich's, being the number 1 striker.
I think the issue there, though, is that Bayern Munich at the moment are in such a bit of a mess, really, that they can't afford to give Tell those sort of minutes that he needs to develop, because it could end badly. Like, so many games are so close at the moment for Bayern. They're not necessarily blowing teams away as they have been in previous years, 5 or 6-0, that they almost can't, can we risk Tell in this period? They're out of the Pokal so early. They're under pressure against Lazio straight away in the Champions League. They're in an absolute dogfight against Leverkusen in the Bundesliga. I don't know. I think he's a fabulous player, and maybe I'm being a bit too harsh, but I think maybe a loan next season might be the best option for him.
It kind of depends what happens with that wide talent as well, though, because there's no guarantee that, say, Leroy Sané is going to be at Bayern Munich forever. If a huge offer, say, were to come in for him because he's had such a great season, do Bayern, potentially, make a profit on Leroy Sané? Kingsley Coman and Gnabry aren't quite as in vogue at the moment, but I don't know. I feel like opportunities will come. I do see your point. A loan would certainly be great for him, but it would have to be to the right club. But I don't think we're going to see another Xerxes situation.
I'd be surprised.
My final player, bit of a personal one. This Rico Lewis.
Nice. I'm surprised he came up so late.
Leave the best till last.
Mainoo's going straight on the thumb, and people have had to wait for him for 45 minutes.
In terms of football intelligence, I think this we're seeing like a ridiculously advanced player for his age. He's started off as a right back, and then Pep inverted him into the midfield from right back, which he took that and then put into John Stones, which obviously allowed him to have that incredible season. So he was already experimenting with Rico Lewis and what his capabilities are from the off, and we've seen him play right back successfully. We've seen him play the inverted right back successfully. We've seen him play DM successfully. We've seen him in a more box-to-box role successfully, and an attacking midfield role successfully. Like to be trusted.
It's unnatural.
To be trusted by Pep, and to have the technical ability. Like, just take away his football intelligence. Technical ability is unreal. He's got that Foden-esque ability to kind of never lose the ball, to get it and suck it. Fair enough, he does. I have seen him lose the ball a few times, but he's extremely tenacious, and he will do his best to win it back, and usually does, with the tackle, the kind of following his player, then getting the tackle in. And then match that with his football intelligence to be able to play certain different positions in Pep Guardiola's demanding system. I can't speak highly of him enough. I think Man City are producing these not only kind of generational Man City legends and whatever. They're producing like the world's best, and I think Rico Lewis is just the next Phil Foden in terms of they've got the same ceiling. I can see Rico Lewis being like team of the year Ballon d'Ors, whatever it's called, the team,
like the top team,
team of the years,
whatever.
Alongside Foden. I genuinely think he's that good.
So who's our 5 going to be?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We need to decide this. Well,
so this
Yamal has to go in there.
All right. So Lamine Yamal, I think Warren Zaire-Emery has to go in there.
Yeah. Those two in there. I think out of my picks, there's not maybe João.
I would really. I know it's not this season. He's had his breakout, but he still played 1,000 minutes this year. But Rico Lewis for me has to be in there.
I think Rico has to be in there. In the best team in the world to be playing that.
He's got a treble already, and was a pivotal part in the tactics that led to it.
Yeah. Okay. So that's 3.
Does Gavi go in?
I mean, Gavi kind of has to go in now that we've said it, haven't we?
I think Gavi's got to go.
So that's 4 already. And then it's basically the Savio or João Neves, I would say. Or I mean, Mainoo, has he had enough minutes? Garnacho as well. I think Vermeeren's been great as well.
Yeah. I think Vermeeren's a tough one because he's unknown, so it's hard to, and he's in an unflattering position.
I think it might have to be João Neves,
Yeah.
Should we put João Neves in there?
I think if Savio wasn't CFG, if he was coming up naturally, let's say, he wasn't such an industry plant.
But I mean, he's been a key player in like one of the best stories in Europe this season.
It's so orchestrated that it takes it down a little bit for me. I think
João Neves also has been a key player in like a
I think Neves' story's more.
We'll go João
Neves. So João Neves 5th, Rico Lewis 4th, Gavi 3rd,
Warren Zaire-Emery second,
Lamine Yamal first.
Yeah. Oh, it's a tough top 5. Let us know what you think of that top 5 in the comments below, and give us your own top 5 in the comments below. Thanks very much to James Wayne for stepping in today. Michael McCubbin for looking so smart. Thanks to you for watching. We'll see you later.